Good afternoon. I'm Caitlin Baggett-Davis, President-elect of City Club of Portland, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's program. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the land we are on is native land and was stolen from people who lived here for thousands of years. Together, we recognize their unbreakable connections to this land, and we honor the resilience of their ancestors and the hope of future generations. With this debate cycle, City Club sustains a tradition of more than 100 years of candidate debates. While much has changed, City Club continues to be an independent and nonpartisan community committed to providing a space for people to gather and participate in lively conversations about the critical issues facing our region. Since our founding, City Club has been a champion for this kind of civic engagement, creativity over partisanship, and common good over narrow self-interests, while holding space for new voices to be heard. We are building and stewarding an open and inclusive public square where all Oregonians are welcome for the exchange of ideas, discussion, and debate about the issues that matter most in our communities and at the ballot box. City Club has been sustained over all these years through the generous support of our members, individual donors, foundations, nonprofits, and businesses, large and small. Today, we are so grateful for the collective support of all our members and donors. In particular, I want to thank our series sponsors, Chevron, Northwest Natural, The Standard, and Tonkin Torp, and our supporting sponsors, Oregon Business and Industry Association and Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems. Thanks also to our media partners, KGW News, Open Signal, and X-Ray FM for sharing this program on television and radio. And thank you for watching and listening. If City Club's work aligns with your values, I hope you'll support us as we continue to produce forums and debates, lead public policy research, and advocate for positive change. In addition to showing up for our events, there are two ways that you can support the work of City Club. You can start by becoming a member today. For more than 100 years, our members have supported City Club to hold Oregon leaders accountable. You can learn more about membership online at pdxcityclub.org/membership. You can also support City Club's work by making a donation today. Our events, which are free to all, are made possible by individual donors like you. Please consider making a gift to help us continue to provide thought-provoking debates and conversations. You can donate now by texting Democracy PDX to 44321. That is Democracy PDX, all one word, to 44321. Or you can give via our website, pdxcityclub.org/donate. Whether you become a member, make a gift, share the link with a friend, or just watch today's debate, all of us at City Club thank you for participating and helping to bring the public square to our community. Today, City Club is hosting a debate between 4 of the candidates running to become chair of Multnomah County Commission: Sharia Mayfield, Sharon Meieran, Lori Stegmann, and Jessica Vega-Pederson. I want to recognize and thank the producer of today's debate, Bobby Regan, our American Sign Language interpreters, Andrew Tolman and C.M. Hall, our timekeeper, Stacy Rice, and the entire volunteer City Club Events Committee for working so hard to make this event and our whole debate series possible. Thank you. The final program in City Club's primary debate series is the Republican gubernatorial debate next Tuesday, May 3rd at noon, followed by the State of the City with Mayor Ted Wheeler on Friday, May 6th, also at noon. Check out pdxcityclub.org to register for these upcoming programs and to watch previous programs on demand. And now, it's my pleasure to welcome 4 of the candidates vying to be the next chair of the Multnomah County Commission: Sharia Mayfield, Dr. Sharon Meieran, Lori Stegmann, and Jessica Vega-Pederson. I also want to take this moment to thank our outgoing Multnomah County Chair, Deborah Kafoury, for her 12 years on the Multnomah County Commission, including 8 years as chair. We appreciate Deborah's service to our county, and we wish her the best. Toya Fick, Executive Director of Stand for Children Oregon, was originally scheduled to moderate today's program. She's not feeling well, and in an abundance of caution, we have a new moderator for today's program. We wish Toya a speedy recovery. With that, it's now my pleasure to welcome and thank Chabre Vickers, moderator for today's debate. Chabre is Vice President, Public Affairs Employee Initiatives Leader for Wells Fargo. Her recent and ongoing community volunteer efforts include the Board of Governors of City Club of Portland, Chair of Portland's Human Rights Commission, board member for the Oregon Symphony, the Native American Youth and Family Center, and Literary Arts. The former executive committee member of the Portland African American Leadership Forum as well. Just last year, Chabre was recognized as a 2021 Woman of Influence by the Portland Business Journal and a Hometown Hero by Portland Trailblazers and Directors Mortgage. Chabre, thank you for joining us.
What's on the horizon? The answers lie beyond the roads we know. We recognize that energy demand is growing and the world needs lower carbon solutions to keep up. At Chevron, we're working to find new ways forward, like through our venture capital group, backing technologies like electric vehicle charging, carbon capture, and even nuclear fusion. We may not know just what lies ahead, but it's only human to search for it.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and welcome to City Club's Multnomah County Chair debate. I thought it would be helpful to set the stage by providing a short summary of this position. The chair of the Multnomah County Commission oversees 6,000 plus staff, dozens of community and civic partnerships, and a budget of nearly $3 billion. Responsibilities include public health, behavioral health and addiction services, public safety, and so much more. The county provides services for seniors and people with disabilities, animal services, assessment and taxation, bridges, community justice, courts, elections, health, jails, libraries, marriage licenses and passports, school and community partnerships, and again, so much more. The chair puts forth the county budget and leads a commission with 4 elected commissioners. It's an important job, and one of the women here on this stage will be charged with overseeing and setting the vision for all of this. The election is Tuesday, May 17th, and ballots are arriving right now. For this race, a candidate must win 50% of the vote plus 1 to win outright. If no candidate wins more than 50%, the top 2 candidates will go on to a runoff in the November election. Once elected, the Multnomah County Chair's term is 4 years, and a chair can serve only 2 consecutive terms. Now, with that background, we have about 1 hour and 15 minutes for this debate. I know you are eager to hear from our candidates, so I will outline ground rules and then we'll begin. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. Once the statements have concluded, we'll move on to our questions for the candidates, which include a lightning round. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer each question in 60 seconds or less. Once the moderated questions have concluded, the candidates will each be given the opportunity to ask 1 question to an opponent. From there, we'll move on to audience questions. City Club has solicited questions in advance from members, the community, and all viewers who registered on the City Club link. I have taken the opportunity to vet and select which questions are posed today. We have a City Club staff person backstage, thank you, to provide timing reminders to candidates. When time is up, we ask each candidate to complete their current sentence in 3 to 5 seconds. Now, if you extend beyond that, I will move on to the next candidate, and my intention, of course, is to distribute questions and time equally. However, as moderator, I do reserve the right to follow up or ask for clarification should it be appropriate and helpful to the discussion. So one unique hallmark of this season's City Club debates is what we're calling free speech passes. If a candidate wants to rebut a point made by an opponent, extend their own answer time, or clarify a response, the candidate simply needs to use a free speech pass. Each candidate has one pass worth 30 seconds. Finally, we'll close the debate with a 1-minute statement from each candidate. Now, before the program, we determined that you would be seated in reverse alphabetical order. I will ask questions starting from right to left. Then the person who answered first will respond last for the next question. So, Jessica, you will go first with your opening remarks, and you have 90 seconds.
So, hello everyone. My name is Jessica Vega-Pederson. I use she, her pronouns. 16 years ago, my husband and I bought our home in East Portland. It was a place we could afford and where we knew we could be a part of the community, and we've been there ever since. It is a rapidly changing community. It's made up of people from all over the world who work hard to better their community, but oftentimes are working hard just to keep their heads above water. When I ran for office 10 years ago, it was because of sidewalks and the dangerous speeds that people drive through my streets. Community came together to support my campaign, and together we got sidewalks and so much more for the people of East Portland. And I have brought that power building approach to every issue I tackled at the state and on the county commission. As the first Latina to serve in the Oregon House, I championed bringing paid sick leave to every Oregon worker, passing tax policies that help seniors stay in their home, raising Oregon's minimum wage, and getting coal out of our energy mix. At Multnomah County, I work with neighborhood associations and small businesses to successfully site shelters and services in my district. I fought to get better COVID response and resources to our BIPOC communities who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. And I led the fight for Preschool for All, a generation-impacting program that will bring quality preschool to all children in Multnomah County and will make a game-changing change for workers as well. I have the experience, the track record of accomplishment, and the vision to take on our housing and homelessness crisis, combat climate change, and increase community safety and address systemic racism. That's why I'm running for Multnomah County Chair.
Thank you. And next, we'll go to Lori.
Thank you, Chabre. My name is Lori Stegmann, and I serve as your vice chair on the Multnomah County Board. I'm a mom, a successful small business owner, and a former Gresham City councilor. As an immigrant and the first Asian American to ever serve on the board, I'm running for chair to represent every person who feels invisible, who has been told that their voice doesn't count, and no matter what you do, you will never be good enough. We have a lot of life-threatening challenges in our community, from homelessness to addiction to gun violence and generational poverty, all steeped in racial injustice. Having experienced many of these traumas myself, I have a deep understanding of the barriers and the solutions of how we can go upstream and offer people access to opportunities to make better choices for themselves. And if we do that, then I know we can make our communities stronger and safer, which is why, as your next chair, I will increase investments in homeless services and public safety, expand behavioral health resources, create an economic development and workforce stability department to connect people to family wage jobs. I'll create an office of reentry services. Also, I'll update our civil commitment laws and create a team similar to the Portland Street response. I'm the only candidate with lived experience who has decades of business and economic development expertise who can change the trajectory that we're on. I'm ready to do that, and I hope you are too.
Thank you so much, Lori. Next, we'll go to you, Sharon.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Meieran. I'm an emergency room doctor, a lawyer, and a volunteer with a medical provider, directly serving people who live outside on our streets. I have the unique skills, perspective, and knowledge that we need at this exact moment in time to confront the crises we're facing right now in homelessness, behavioral health, public safety, and move the county forward. Every day, we see some form of inhumanity when we walk out our door, whether if we are fortunate to have a door to walk out of, and whether that is people living unsheltered outside in garbage on the street, people in mental health crises being taken to jail instead of treatment. It's not okay. But every day I see local government, including our county board, acting like it is. It might be because I'm an ER doctor, but
but we shouldn't be patient when thousands of people are living in squalor and dying on our streets. This is not a housing issue, it is a humanitarian crisis. We should not be tolerant of systems that perpetuate the status quo. I thought being commissioner would be sufficient to get things done in terms of the county's functioning, but I've learned that the chair is actually in charge, and that's why I'm running for this seat. I appreciate my colleagues turning their attention now to houselessness, but it's too little too late. I know the issues, I've done the work, and I have the plans. I'm an ER doctor, and we're facing an emergency. I will take charge of these crises, and that's why I'm running for county chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, Sharia, you're next.
Thank you. So Sharia Mayfield, for those who don't know me, I'm an employment rights attorney and a law professor teaching privacy law at Willamette, and I am running because I am fed up with the current leadership, including the 3 commissioners running against me, who have been in power for 5 or more years and just now are talking about things they're going to do to fix these crises as we've spiraled into having the second highest unsheltered population in the United States after California as of a 2021 study. So we're only getting worse. And despite that, we knew from 2015 that we've been in a homeless emergency. And so it's been over 6 years. The current leadership isn't working. We need rapid action to get people off the streets into humane alternatives, using enforcement if necessary, but really trying to provide multiple options to the folks on the streets. They're not all the same, so having shelter options, low and high barrier options, sanctioned camp areas with hygiene services. These are all things that I would be focusing on critically and urgently because the current leadership has not done that. If you don't want the status quo, then you shouldn't be voting for the politicians running against me who have been in power for 5 or more years as we've spiraled out of control. I was born in Portland. I've never seen it like this before. I'm disillusioned, I'm sad, and I'm hoping that the people watching this are also disillusioned and want a new path forward, a fresh vision, somebody who can get things done, who has a track record of success, and who has the energy and the zeal to collaborate and start changing our course as we move forward into a more beautiful, cleaner, and safer county for everyone.
Thank you, Sharia. Now, before we go to our first quick practice lightning round questions, we do have a candidate that's asked to use their free speech pass. And so, Sharon, you ready to use it? Okay, you have your 30 seconds.
I would just like to speak to a couple of the points that Sharia raised, which I really appreciate so many of the ideas you bring to the table, and you do those speak to, the 3 of us sitting here today as, as not having accomplished anything. And I think it's why it's so important who is chair and why it's so important to have the understanding of how the office actually works and how the commission works, because that is where decisions are made and whose chair directs that. So
thank you. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.
Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started with our 2 short practice lightning round questions. And we'll start with Lori. After that, we'll go to Sharon, Sharia, and we'll come back to Jessica. For these, we ask you to respond with either a word or a short sentence. Don't worry, it's not hard. Our first question is, who is the most influential person in your life, excluding family members? Lori?
Harry Holt.
Harry Holt, thank you. Sharon?
I didn't use my little pass. It's family members. I'm gonna have to come back to it. I can't.
Okay,
think.
that sounds good. Sharia?
Imam Mamadou Touré, my spiritual leader that I grew up with.
Thank you. And Jessica?
My 8th grade teacher, Mrs. Gertz, who said I needed to get into something that had to do with words and changing things.
Nice. Okay, Sharon, I'll give you one last section. Would you like to answer who is the most influential person in your life, excluding a family member?
I don't have an answer for that. And I would actually like to, I'd like to raise something that I think is important in processing information and the types of questions and how these things happen, that sometimes it is difficult for people with certain disabilities to be able to respond in this way at the moment. And I suffer from one of those disabilities, which makes this a strange type of forum. So I apologize, but processing in that way, I don't think it points to the way one can be a chair.
Thank you.
But it's just important to bring up. So
Thank you. Thank you so much,
it's not, I
Sharon.
don't have the influences. Just
Thank you.
processing.
Yeah, thank you. We have one more question, and we're meant to start with you. This one comes from an audience member named Mary, and she asks, "What is your superpower?"
It is authenticity.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll go to you, Sharia.
I always have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and I will get things done. That's my superpower.
Thank you, Sharia. And Jessica.
Keeping my eye on the vision and making sure we accomplish it.
Lori.
My lived experience.
Lived experience. Okay, so those are the lightning round questions. We just wanted to get you warm, and we're going to move into the moderator questions, and so we'll go through that. I will ask a series of questions related to countywide issues. Each of you have 60 seconds to respond to each question. At 60 seconds, please complete your sentence. This time, we'll start with Sharia, then we'll move to Jessica, Lori, and then Sharon. First question is, as county chair, how will you work to address the root causes of homelessness?
Great.
Sharia?
Great, thank you. So we have to identify them first. Drug addiction, mental health, poverty, and trauma. I did criminal defense. I've worked in prison work. I've worked at the DOJ. I've worked for Senator Wyden. So I actually draw from my own experience working with people who have been on the fringes, and I've done civil commitment appeals as well. And what you'll realize is a lot of people that are on the streets and actually who end up in jail have backgrounds of mental health trauma, of drug addiction, of substance abuse disorders, and so on. So in my position as county chair, I would be really working hard to create dual diagnosis centers. I've said this repeatedly. Those are centers you can go to get treatment for both substance abuse issues and mental health issues at the same time, instead of having to jump through hoops. They should be all around town. They should be cheap or free. They should be easy to access, not just for folks on the streets, but everyone who needs that sort of treatment. But I would say let's start a pilot program with the folks on the streets, get them their mental health and drug addiction treatment that they need. In some cases, that needs to be mandatory for dangerous people, and really focus on those root causes of trauma and, in many cases, childhood trauma.
Thank you, Sharia. The question goes to you next, Jessica. As county chair, how will you work to address the root causes of homelessness?
Yeah, so as county chair, I would make sure that, first of all, our county departments and division are working together to make sure that we're addressing issues like poverty, like mental illness and addiction, and working to make sure that we are putting resources into people's hands to help them stay housed, because we know housing affordability is one of the leading cause of homelessness as well. I will make sure also that we're working across jurisdictions so that we're doing that same kind of collaboration and leveraging of resources with both the city of Portland, with the East County cities, and with the metro government as well. I think it's really important that we're working together as the city is doing their investments in aligning their first responder responses, that we are integrating the work with the behavioral health, with the mobile units that the county provides, and that the work that the county does. And then as county chair, I will also be advocating at the state and federal level to get more resources for affordable housing for people so that they can stay in their homes, and that people who are placed in homes can be successful with their wraparound supportive services and rent subsidy to help them be there.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jessica. And next, we'll go to you, Lori.
Thank you, Chabre. I love this question because it asks about the root causes of homelessness. And I often don't hear people talk about that. And I think that we really need to focus on those root causes of trauma, violence, generational poverty and racism. And specifically what I have been doing is I've been working on master leases. You may have heard of the 3,000 challenge, where there's probably maybe 30,000 empty units that we could connect nonprofits with houseless individuals to get them housed. And right now I am doing that. So while a lot of people talk about what we should be doing, I'm actually doing it. We also have the Behavioral Health Resource Center that will be opening this fall that has about 32 beds of transitional and emergency housing. And I've also created over 334 units of affordable housing in East County. We are also working with the HOPE team through the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, who does outreach services to our houseless population in East County. I have advocated and funded for their team for the last 5 years and will continue to do so.
Thank you so much, Lori. And Sharon, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so I love this question as well. In the ER, we see people who have fallen through multiple cracks in our systems of care, who haven't had the supports to keep them safe or healthy, and they end up in this place of crisis. And so addressing those root causes is key. As Commissioner Stegmann mentioned, anti-poverty work, and I know that she is doing a great amount of that work in East County, and addressing systemic racism, which is work that we are doing at the county. There is so much trauma. We do need to address substance use disorder and mental health issues, but not at the crisis point, which is where the Behavioral Health Resource Center and Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network come in, but at the outset, early childhood, early learning, youth mental health, and our elders. And we need those long-term rental assistance and supports to keep people in their housing so that they don't lose that. So multifactorial, lots of work there.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Okay, so we're going to move to question 2, and we're going to stick with this topic. The Oregonian writes that the race for the next Multnomah County Chair boils down to this: do voters want someone who will stay the course on the county's approach to homelessness, or do they want someone who will bring urgency and targeted strategies to confront the totality of the crisis? I tend to agree that homelessness is the biggest issue facing the county, consuming up to $200 million of the county budget. We have limited time, so I'm going to focus your responses by asking each of you a specific question based on things I've read on your websites or in interviews you've given. So each of you will get your own individual question. Jessica, we'll start with you. You have called for an expansion of shelters while also dealing with long-term housing issues. Can you elaborate on how you would prioritize these strategies, or if you anticipate giving them equal weight, and how you plan to execute?
Sure. I think when it comes to addressing the housing and homelessness crisis, which would be my number one priority as county chair, we have to be thinking in terms of short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategies. We have the dollars from the Supportive Housing Services measure now that we have never had before, and we need to put those to work effectively. So in looking at how I would prioritize shelters and alternative shelters. Shelters are a way of helping people get stabilized so that they can be moving more safely off the street, so that they can have access to mental health services, physical health services. So one of the things that I would do for shelters is really support some of the alternative models, especially some of the things that private groups are putting together to get people into shelters, while also using the government's dollars and reach to look at big capacity things like master leasing at hotels, where we have staff on site to address mental health and physical needs as other wraparound services. And then long-term planning, looking at building the affordable housing and making sure we're putting the services in place so that people can be successful there too.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Lori, we're going to go to you next. Now, you've said that this crisis has 2 issues to address: homelessness and housing affordability. And you call for long-term strategies and measurable outcomes. Can you elaborate on what those strategies and outcomes would look like if you were elected chair?
Thank you, Chabre. Yeah, it really is about having a continuum of services. We know that that often people enter into our services or into our care through emergency shelter. But after they go through emergency shelter, what is the next step? Well, sometimes that can be directly into rapid rehousing, which is really one of the most quick ways that we can get folks. And when we're talking about doing these master leases, yes, let's just get people off the streets and into housing. That's what solves housing. Also, working with organizations like Salvation Army's Bridgeway of Hope, where this is the next step for men in a residential program who are clean and sober, but now they have to think about supporting themselves, the job training, the skills that they will need to be self-supportive. And so that's exactly what Bridgeway of Hope does, is that they provide a culinary school. They also are working with the trades to really give people the opportunities and the tools that they need to be self-sufficient. That's how we solve homelessness, is by looking at economic stability.
Thank you, Lori. Sharon, you've called on the county to urgently address the humanitarian crisis of homelessness and put out a plan over a year ago that you noted would provide what many living outside would actually prefer: meet the need of our entire community and be a win-win. You added that was unfortunately rejected by my fellow commissioners. Can you tell us a bit more about that plan and address how you would get the buy-in of your colleagues if you are elected chair?
Yes, thank you. So my proposed approach to get people into shelter is about this is not a housing question, it's a safety, urgency, public health question, a humanitarian question. And it adds two things to our current system. One is a network of microsites. So each of these would be a tiny footprint, say 10 structures with basic amenities, toilet, hygiene, shower and laundry, trash pickup, small, like the size of this room. People on the radio can't see it, but it's not that big. And if we had one of those in every neighborhood in Portland, that's 1,000 people we're talking about getting placed somewhere off of the streets that's safer and healthier. This is what people, I go out, I've spoken with hundreds of people living outside, what they want, what business owners want, what neighborhoods want. So that is huge, and that scale, not the one-offs or the specific issues. And then we need coordination. We are lacking that. We need to put order to the chaos, and having this provides that baseline first rung of the ladder where people can actually breathe, so all the outreach we do is effective and gets people onto the pathway to housing.
Thank you. Sharia, we're going to go to you next. You say we are dealing with an emergency and have been since 2015, and that the current county response is exacerbating the problem. You've talked about radically shifting gears and proposed that the county create sanctioned camp areas around the county. Can you tell us more about that plan and how it compares with a similar plan that was rejected by members of the Portland City Council?
Sure. So this is a little bit similar to the microsites. I don't anticipate that these campsites are going to be gigantic, such as 1,000 person type shelter or camps. But really, the importance of doing the campsites is we need something to just move people into fixed addresses. That's the very, very first step. So as chair, I'm about damage control, and I have the motto of don't let perfection be the enemy of good. If it's better than what we currently have, which is people living in squalor, in the ditch, on the side of the road, in piles of garbage, with criminal acts happening all the time, assault, drug addiction, violence, we have to get them into supervised areas where they can have hygiene services, toilets, showers, laundry, get them on Social Security disability benefits. I do that in my work. I work with people on disability so that the feds can start easing up some of the local taxpayer burden of this issue that we're disproportionately getting from other states where people are moving here. And the elephant in the room is that, yes, I would love to do all of this voluntarily, and I think we can, but I'm not shy to say that if people want to privatize public space and refuse to move to any of the options we give them, I would use enforcement. I would promote enforcement.
Thank
so
you.
That's really what sets me apart from my opponents.
Thank you, Sharia. Okay, we are going to move on to the next question. We're going to start with you, Lori, then we'll go to Sharon, Sharia, and Jessica. The American Rescue Plan has provided over $150 million to the county to respond to the pandemic. Over the last 2 years, these resources have been used to help with housing stability, address an increase in domestic violence, and many other important programs. This money goes away in 2024. So there's a looming cliff. you will have to address during your tenure as county chair. Will you, or how will you, continue to pay for these programs and supports once that $150 million from the feds dry up? What county programs might you reduce or eliminate to continue these? Again, we'll start with you first, Lori.
Thank you. So yeah, fortunately, we have passed some measures around homelessness. As you know, the Metro Housing Bond, as well as the Supportive Housing Services Measure Bond. So there is an influx of money. So oftentimes we refer to one-time only versus ongoing funding. So we have to be really smart about what, sometimes when we make capital improvements, that is a one-time only type of program, like when we're building affordable housing. So I think it's about being smart about how we're spending money. And I think we have to really look more closely, like what are the best ways to deliver those services. There might be other ways than what we're doing currently. It's just really important that we balance the needs, because while I support all of the services that we're doing around homelessness, there are other departments that have not received funding. For instance, roads and transportation and other areas where we really need to think about, especially in East County, that need attention and service.
Thank you, Lori. Sharon?
Thank you. Yeah, the ARPA funds have literally been life-saving. They are one-time only funds, or that can only be used for a certain amount of time. So I've been an advocate of doing things that require large one-time only investments that will then be invested in for the future, so we can see long-term results. So for example, I do support purchasing and reusing facilities that we can, such as hotels and motels that we can refurbish, can be used then as shelters, ultimately maybe even supportive housing or other things. That's why the microsites that I talked about would be so great to use ARPA funding for, because once you get those established, get people connected to them, get the infrastructure set up with the coordination we need and the systems there, it can be self-perpetuating, and we don't need to invest those additional resources. It's about using the resources we have wisely for what their function is supposed to be.
Thank you. Sharia?
Sure, and so this is talking about when the funds dry up. And so when the funds dry up, my top priority has been and will continue to be the housing instability issue and the homelessness crisis. And I separate those out. The homelessness crisis is, again, primarily a drug addiction and mental health crisis, and affordable housing crisis, which overlaps, is primarily, in my opinion, a poverty crisis, people who just can't afford to pay for housing. So using the funds that we currently have for rent assistance was a great thing. We need to continue doing that at the county level. And once the federal funds dry up, use the housing bond money that we have for urgent action to build some of these short-term alternatives like the RV parks, the sanctioned camp areas that I've mentioned, tiny homes, pod homes. All these options, we need to get them in place immediately. And then once the ARPA funds are gone, we move into the housing bond funds, and we need to use these dollars that we have immediately. And also, when I talk about homelessness and affordable housing issues, because it does overlap with drug addiction and mental health, we need to continue programs to fund mental health treatment and dual diagnosis centers, which I mentioned before as well.
Thank you, Sharia. We have a candidate, Lori, would like to use her free speech pass. And so, Lori, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. Around the budget, we're already paying. All you have to do is look at our ERs, our jails. There is money. And if we can redirect that money to provide services that prevent people from spiraling into homelessness and addiction, then that's where the money is. And the other thing I wanted to respond to is the micro villages. I do not see those as an economic, cost-effective way to have 100 villages. It's just economically, you cannot manage 100 different sites without hiring a lot of people and a lot of expense.
Thank you, Lori. Now, Jessica, we're going to close out this question with your response.
Okay, sure. So, we do have a looming cliff at the county, but we also have it at the city. So I think that's why it's so important to make sure that we are coordinating the resources that both governments have put into effect with the ARPA funds, which include rental assistance, temporary shelters, including the Safe Rest villages. There's also been money to gun violence response, including behavioral health workers for that. So we have to really be looking at how effective those programs are. and then have to make the hard decisions about which ones have been shown to be most effective, which ones are getting the outcomes that we intended when we were funding those programs, and then either cut some of those that aren't working or find the money at the county to use as ongoing funds to continue those programs that are being effective. And the county, luckily, is not facing a deficit in the upcoming fiscal years. We actually have some cushion, so I do think there is room for those programs that are going to be most effective to continue on. And I will, as county chair, I would prioritize making sure that we are funding programs that are really helping people in becoming more self-sufficient and getting the stability that they need.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to criminal justice. And in this, we'll start with Sharon. We'll go then next to Sharia, Jessica, and we'll close with Lori. So let's talk about public safety. As you know, the Multnomah County Sheriff is elected, yet the County Commission adopts the budget for the Sheriff's office. The Sheriff's budget is one of the larger line items in the budget at more than $170 million. Suggesting possibly this structure means that many of the reforms you want to do can be done via the budget. There have been a number of conversations over the past just 2 years about reforming our criminal justice system, from diversion, reentry programs, overhauling our parole and probation system to community justice. What is the county's role to help transform the criminal justice system? And how will you use the budget to move this forward? Once again, we're going to start with you, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you. This ties into the work we are reimagining justice work that has been led by our local public service coordinating council. And that is a very intensive, it's been a process of engaging stakeholders from across our community in such a broad range, from behavioral health, from criminal justice, from the sheriff's office, from the police, from parole probation, all the upstream, downstream services, to say, what should an ideal criminal justice system, criminal legal system, public safety system look like, including restorative justice and so much more, to come to collective agreement on strategies to achieve that plan with all of these different organizations. That's actually how we should be doing work in all of the work that we do. And so that's the long-term visioning and approach, is collaboration. There's stuff we need to be doing immediately. It does not address that. So
Thank you, Sharon.
more to be said there.
Sharia, you're next.
Thank you. So this really hits close to home as somebody who did criminal defense work, criminal appeals, prison work, representing prisoners and prisons. So I've been really at the intersection of crime and prison law type of work. And one thing I realized is that the county chair, and especially with my background, can be in a role to collaborate with not just the sheriff's office at the county level, but the Portland Police Bureau as well, to come up with reforms and to push for necessary reforms, things I can do. I'm also the only candidate that has helped take badges away from police officers who acted in a way that was misconduct under the rules. And so here's my number one idea, and I want to throw this out there for everyone. When I worked in prison work, they had a grievance process for any prisoner who wanted to decry correctional officers' misconduct. The prison had to respond within 30 days, and then you can do an appeal, you can do a second appeal. There's an interactive process. We don't have that for regular citizens right now. So one thing I would like to see first and foremost is accountability and transparency over our law enforcement, which means we need a grievance process, an administrative process to decry misconduct by our officers. We need that at the sheriff's level, but also at the police level, and I would be helping to collaborate that with my own background.
Thank you. Jessica, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so this is public safety, and our justice system is a huge part of the county's work. I am a very big supporter of the Transforming Justice initiative that the county is working on right now. We just were briefed on it the other day, so I encourage people to check that out. We really need to make sure that we're using our jail space for people who are doing violent crimes or people who are doing repeated crimes without mental health or addiction issues that are also impacting them. We want to make sure that people who really, the help that they really need is behavioral health, mental health support, addiction support, are not going into our jails for that, but that we have the system in place to be able to serve those folks so that our jail space is for people who are doing violent crimes. So we have to be investing in our behavioral health services. We have to be investing in community organizations who are doing that deep work in community. And we also, as county chair, have to be looking at our partnership with the court system and their role in providing justice, our state in funding our public defender system, and with our sheriff and our district attorneys, we have to have more budget transparency and resources.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Okay. Lori, we're going to go to you last with this question.
Well, thank you. My colleagues have mentioned the Transforming Justice Initiative, and I actually have been leading that charge and working with many different departments. So that's incredibly important. It's about changing how all of the systems interact. And one of the ways that we can do that is the first thing I'll do is create an Office of Reentry Services. Right now, when people are released from jail or prison, they're often released into homelessness. And we have to give them different opportunities, better opportunities so that they can make better choices. So again, it's about making sure that someone has housing, also helping youth that are coming out of the foster care system or aging out. The other thing I think is really important is around ballot measure 110 and the budget. Hopefully that we'll actually see some money and grants coming out of that system so that we can treat people, and we're going to need help from our state and federal partners, absolutely. And then the last thing I will mention is the Portugal model, where we really have to look at how to decriminalize drug possession, but to get people into treatment.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so we are going to move forward to our next question. I'm going to start with Sharia, then we'll go to Jessica, Lori, Sharon, to close this next question out. This year, 675 preschool slots will open thanks to the Preschool for All measure that voters passed in 2020. The promise of this measure was universality. Yet, 1/3 of childcare organizations are closed, and we don't have the number of provider applicants stable enough to take on more kids. Sharia, the question is, how do you link Preschool for All with the other family support services that the county provides, such as housing, mental health supports, and more? And how will you work to ensure county family support funds are put to their best and highest use?
Well, this is one thing where I may disagree with Commissioner Vega-Pederson on a lot of priorities, but I actually commend her efforts on the Preschool for All. I think that was a success. In doing workers' rights work myself, you see that there's a lot of workplace inequity and earning potential inequity, particularly for people of color when they don't have the ability to have child care services provided to them for free. And so having Preschool for All puts those kids into an early start to learn, head start to learn, but also gives them an opportunity to be under supervision so that parents can continue to work and potentially have two incomes, which is so necessary with the poverty we're in now. So I don't actually have the answers on how we're going to find those providers. I will defer to Commissioner Vega-Pederson, and I trust that she will find a way to make that program work because she did help spearhead it. But I'm supportive of that, and as chair, I would be supportive of those efforts. And one other thing at the county level for family support is making sure that all courts have child care services provided. You can get volunteers to do that because people who show up to court oftentimes bring their children and can't go into the courtroom without severe issues there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Jessica, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so this is not going to be enough time for me, but so I think, we created Preschool for All with the intention of making sure that it was going to be a robust program that would grow to universality over 10 years. So we do have time to really work with our provider base to expand the number of providers and the number of slots so that we can get to universal, because we know we're in a critical crisis right now and the pandemic just made it worse. But I will say that we have, as we made Preschool for All, we wanted to make sure that we were linking it with other county support services. For instance, the Preschool for All measure actually funds 3 early childhood mental health specialists that sit in our behavioral health division. So that, because we know that is an important piece. We also have a really good model at the county of how we are already using county programs to connect children and families to resources through our SUN program, our Schools Uniting Neighborhood. This is where county services and we're funding things that are based at schools. And so that has been a link already of where we're having schools connected to county services. And I think that will be a great model that we will, that we're implementing with Preschool for All too, so that our providers have that support.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you so
thank you.
much. Lori, you're next.
Yeah, daycare is absolutely one of the most expensive things that families have to deal with. And I'm really proud of the work that I did as a Gresham City Councilor in our urban renewal area called the Downtown Rockwood. And we were very cognizant about ensuring that there were going to be services for people that actually live in that community. And one of those is a daycare center. But it is challenging to hire more people, and historically they don't pay family wages. So I'm hoping that Commissioner Vega-Pederson can lead that charge. And then also through our Reynolds High School, we were able to get a behavioral health center that ties in and provides more counseling, because we know that our youth has suffered through COVID and lack of resources in mental health. So that's something that I advocated, I fought for, and I got. And I also think that we should co-locate services. We are opening a brand new flagship library in Gresham. And sometimes our libraries become de facto shelters. And by providing services for people, that will help.
Thank you so much. Sharon, we're going to close this question out with you.
Yes, I support universal preschool and believe this needs to be connected to all the other county supports and services we operate, along with supporting workforce there to have a living wage and to thrive. So we do have the new, I think it's 23 person bureaucracy at the county that will need to intersect with all of those services. And I am glad that Commissioner Vega-Pederson will remain at the county regardless of this race, to be able to help direct where that work goes, since she was a leader in getting that passed. And so as chair, that will be one of the things I work on. But I think that's the beauty of having such an amazing board, is we leverage all our different areas of expertise. Mine happens to be right now the core areas of houselessness, mental health, addictions, public safety. And as an ER doctor, that's what I'll approach right now.
Thank you. So we are going to move quickly. Instead of many lightning round questions, I'm going to ask one simple lightning round question. And we're going to start with you, Lori. We'll go to Sharon next, Sharia, and we'll close out with Jessica. This is a light one.
Okay.
What is your favorite Multnomah County bridge?
Tillicum.
That's a good one. Sharon?
Broadway.
Broadway. Sharia?
Hawthorne, I had my first kiss there on July 4th.
Oh, great. And Jessica?
I have to say Hawthorne, because it's the one I take going back and forth from east to west.
Awesome. We are going to now move into the space where the candidates will ask questions of each other. So we have set aside time for each of you to ask a question of one other candidate of your choosing. Please be extremely succinct. Identify who you are asking the question of first. Keep your question to no more than 20 seconds, and please state it as a question. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to that question. For this round, we'll start with you, Sharon. You'll get to ask your question first. We'll then move to Sharia. Jessica, you'll ask your question third, and Lori will close out with your question. And so, Sharon, you have 20 seconds. What question and who are you going to ask?
I will ask Commissioner Vega-Pederson, and that is why the messaging, your messaging around houselessness and shelter has changed, or even just started since the campaign began a couple of months ago, from shelter to permanent housing, and now you're talking much more about shelter.
Thank you.
And never had.
What's the question?
Have you changed your position on shelter vis-a-vis permanent housing?
Thank you.
No, I've worked as a commissioner to actually site shelters successfully in my district. I worked with neighborhood associations. People in the community were really, really upset. First of all, when the Hansen shelter was sited before I was a county commissioner. And so when it came to siting shelters in my district, when we had the foster shelter, I made sure to engage with the community to get that sited successfully. That is a model that I will continue to promote as we're building more shelter for sure. So I have always thought that shelter was an option. I think the getting people stabilized in temporary situations so that they can be more successful in housing is also like a path that we have to take. And ultimately, we have to get people permanently housed. Like, we just can't keep having people on our streets. And I've also always promoted things like investing in things that the county traditionally hasn't, like vector control. So let's put more resources into affecting some of the impacts like rats, or working with the city and Metro to fund trash pickup. Like, those are the responses that we have to do. And I've always been a proponent of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sharia, next, who is your question for? And you have 20 seconds to ask the question.
Also, Commissioner Vega-Pederson. And my question is, in the instance that there is a homeless person in a tent on a sidewalk, sleeping, say, downtown, and you give them the options that are available, even including permanent housing, for example, potentially, and they refuse and say, I like it out here and I insist on staying here, would you support enforcement to remove them off the sidewalk? And in which situations would you support enforcement?
Yeah, so I don't actually have to imagine somebody downtown. There's somebody on the block, just like right up the street from my house, who is living in a tent on a sidewalk. And I actually had a conversation with them to see what they needed and what they wanted. They were actually really interested in getting out of a tent and getting into a more stable situation. They had somebody who was living in an RV that they wanted to move in with, and they were able to do that. I think if somebody has said that they do not want to go into housing or go into a shelter, that's only going to be an issue if we have enough shelters for them to go in. So we have to make sure that we have those shelters, we have a place for that person to go. And if they don't want to go there, then then we need to be doing outreach to see what do they need to help make that path so that they can want to do that. Sometimes they're worried because they don't have enough space for their goods, right? That they don't have places for all their belongings. So we have to be setting up shelters that have enough space for their belongings. We also have to make sure that if people want to bring their pets with them, that we have a place for their pets to go.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Would you like to use your 30 seconds?
I'd like to use my 30 seconds.
Okay, your free speech pass. You have 30 seconds.
I think this is exactly the problem, is we're not getting clear answers on when enforcement can and will be used. I'm the only one who's saying those uncomfortable truths, that when somebody refuses help, and however we define help, I think we should be focusing on how we can provide compassionate help. But at some point, and as a lawyer, we are, we hope for the best, but we expect the worst and we prepare for the worst. And I'm the only one who's willing to do that, because I do not trust that continuing to only do outreach will solve this problem. When people refuse to get help, at some point you have to use enforcement, and that's the reality, and nobody else on this commission seems to be saying that.
Sharia. Okay, Jessica, next you are able to ask a question, and who is your question for?
Okay, so my question is for Commissioner Meieran. So both Commissioner Stegmann and I have been able to pass important policies at the county level without a unanimous vote on the board. I've even been able to get things passed on the board without the support of Chair Kafoury. Having the political acumen to negotiate and win people over to your priorities passed is a requirement of an elected leader. Why should voters trust you to be able to get your priorities passed, even with just 3 votes, when you haven't been able to do so far?
So just, can I ask a clarifying question?
You have a clarifying question quickly?
Sort of, yeah, so what is the, I would like to know which policy you're talking about with the majority that didn't have the chair's buy-in for it.
Would you like to quickly restate just the question portion of your?
Yes, why should voters trust you to be able to get your priorities passed with even just 3 votes when you haven't been able to do that so far?
You have 60 seconds. Thank you.
I think that's a great question, and it ties, first of all, there is so much that I've accomplished that is on my website. People can look at it in the realm of mental health, in houselessness, in a number of areas. The big picture and direction lives with the chair's office. And the chair sets the agendas for all of our conversations, sets the agendas at the meetings on housing and homeless services, and then sets the broad budget that we then at the, kind of address some portions of. The role of chair is, and the chair chooses the heads of departments and oversees them. So if the chair has a vision, I've brought these up ad nauseum, and they have not even been allowed on the agendas for discussion or conversation. And if the people that I have on my team are able to get information across, set those agendas and those budget priorities, and call out the truth and direct it, that's where change can happen in the big picture, not just individual policies.
Thank you, Sharon. Lori, you have a question.
I
Go
do.
ahead and state who it is.
Thank you.
and
For
your
Jessica.
question.
As a successful small business owner and operator for nearly 30 years, I would never hire someone to run a nearly $3 billion organization with 6,000 employees that has never owned or operated a business, developed a strategic plan, or had to make payroll. Outside of your tenure on our board, what direct experience qualifies you to be our next CEO and Chief HR Officer?
Yeah, so I think the things that qualify me to be our CEO of the county is just the track record of getting things done, getting big things done, and doing it at the state level, doing it with people who are from different political parties, from different jurisdictions. And I did that with Preschool for All. I've done that with climate change. I've also made sure to be involved in our budget process, both as a county commissioner, as a state representative who was dealing with much bigger budgets at the state level. I sat on the revenue committee where we're looking at tax policy that impacted our states. And I have 10 years experience in the private sector as a technology project manager. So I was in charge of budgets. I was making sure things got done on time and under budget to deliver to our clients. I think the county chair's role is very similar to putting all of those things together, where you have to be able to negotiate things, you have to be able to lead departments. I know I have the trust of our county employees. I am the only candidate that's been endorsed by AFSCME, and so I know I have the goodwill and the experience to do that job well.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to quickly move into audience questions. As noted earlier, City Club solicited questions in advance, from which I'm selecting of the following. You have 60 seconds to respond. I'm going to go to Jessica's question, Julie's question first, and the question first goes to you, Jessica.
Okay.
Okay, Julie asks, what initiatives will you take relative to reducing carbon emissions, which we know are severely impacting human health and everything on our planet? What is the county's role, and how will you provide leadership on this?
Yeah, county has an important role and actually all of us do, when it comes to fighting our climate crisis. And I've been a leader on this, both at the state level and locally. So I think the first thing is looking at our own emissions that we have at the county government itself. So making sure, I'm working right now to say we're not going to use gas-powered leaf blowers, which cause air pollution, which have climate impact. But bigger than that, we have to be making sure that the work that we're doing in terms of our own transportation fleet, the way that we are fueling and providing energy to our own buildings, and what we're requiring of our contractors and the people that we do business with are really centering climate work and making sure that we're reducing emissions all we can. We also have to be engaged with communities. We know that BIPOC communities, low-income communities are feeling the impacts of climate change the most. And so as we look at our public health work, as we look at our health center work, we need to make sure that we are doing the outreach to those communities to make sure that climate resiliency is something that we're building into all of our programs. And I think providing heat pumps, for instance, is a example of that.
Thank you so much. Lori, we're going to go to you next.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in this because when I was a Gresham City Councilor, we were one of the first cities in the nation to have the first net zero wastewater treatment plant. And not only does that, provide an important service, it is saving taxpayers $500,000 each year. So I'm going to take that type of creativity to the Multnomah County Chair's position, working with Keith Wilson around phasing out fossil fuel and introducing renewable diesel. We can do that through our procurement processes. So we can require people that we contract with, people that they contract with, to make sure that we get fossil fuel out of our system. I also worked very closely with Commissioner Ryan's office when Zenith wanted to expand their footprint in Portland. And fortunately, the city of Portland denied that permit. And I worked very hard behind the scenes to make sure that they were not able to expand their footprint. Also, we can do better on our buildings and require an assessment of each one of those as we build new buildings.
Thank you, Lori. Sharon, this question goes to you next.
Great. So the county has an important role in combating our climate crisis, both in mitigation and addressing the crisis. And I also would advocate and support Commissioner Stegmann in the work she talks about, working with Keith Wilson, other innovators who have policies like renewable diesel that we could implement at the county. I'm very much about innovation, thinking creatively and outside the box how we can use our county role as the Board of Health, as an emergency management coordinator, to be able to combine those things. So addressing the intersections of health and climate, the intersections of emergency management and climate, such as with environmental resiliency hubs that can help us during the heat emergencies when people tragically died from the heat. So we have a lot of expertise on our board. That is something I would love to leverage and in the community.
Thank you.
As chair.
Okay, Sharia, this question goes to you next.
Great, thank you. And this is absolutely within the purview of the county chair, and there's so many things I would like to just list off, so I'll try to go rapid fire, but I agree with the renewable diesel, and I think we need to be modeling this at the government level first and foremost, set the stage so that others can follow in suit. So electric vehicles, renewable diesel vehicles. We have a problem with tree canopy affecting underrepresented, poorer neighborhoods, and we need to continue to plant trees and ensure that they're not in these urban, these heat islands that exacerbate bad outcomes when we have climate chaos, which is inevitably happening and will continue to happen without extremely urgent action. Expand paratransit services. I was severely injured a few years ago, and having to navigate public transit with a spinal injury was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And just having to walk between places, get different stops, there's gaps between certain stops. So paratransit is having vehicles come to you in areas that are harder to reach, or if you have disabilities, we need more of that.
Thank you. Okay. And now for our next question, based upon time, I'm going to ask one final question before we go to closing statements. And first, for the final question, we'll go to you, Lori. Tell us about one topic we didn't discuss today that you would like to spend 1 minute on.
I mentioned the Portugal model. I think about getting upstream from our most challenging issues, and I think nobody's talking about the drug, the fentanyl, and the meth crisis that I think is a huge driver of the violence, the homicides that we're seeing, as well as the property crimes. I think about the mom who is barely getting by, and then to have to walk out to her car and find out that her catalytic converter has been stolen. Now she doesn't have transportation. She doesn't have a way to pay for that damage. And so we really have to get upstream. And so I like the Portugal model because what they do is that people, if you're caught with a 10-day supply of drugs, then you are mandated, under a 10-day supply, you're mandated to go through medical treatment. If you have over a 10-day supply, then you will go through the criminal justice system. And right now, our youth, people are being killed by meth and fentanyl, and it is a major driver of a lot of the violence and the public safety issues that we're having.
Thank you, Lori. Sharon, this question goes to you. What is one topic we didn't discuss that you would like to spend 1 minute on?
I too would like to call out behavioral health, which is the combination of mental health and addictions. And Commissioner Stegmann said no one is talking about meth and opioids. I talk about these things ad nauseum, and I see thousands of people in the emergency department suffering from these conditions and know what we need to do to address them. So I know that I'm glad my fellow commissioners are supportive of, for example, the Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network. I led those efforts to address the crisis in our communities around substance use disorder and the need for a center where people can go that is not jail, not the ERs where I see them, and that they're not on the street where I also see them, and meet their needs as human beings. But it is more than just homelessness and violence. It is our youth who are facing crises right now. I'm sponsoring a youth mental health forum at the end of May. Very excited about that is driven by youth, and have had regular engagement with youth in community who actually know what they need. And we need to communicate that to our elected representatives and leaders. Also, elders, we rarely talk about their needs, and the isolation and trauma has made things worse. We need a system that functions.
Thank you, Sharon. Sharia?
Thank you. And I want to echo those sentiments. I actually agree with Commissioner Stegmann and Commissioner Meieran on the behavioral mental health issues that are going on and drug addiction issues, primarily the meth crisis. But one thing I want to focus on is the pandemic. And as we're coming out of this pandemic, Commissioner Meieran just mentioned isolation of the elderly, but also isolation of Gen Z. They're now the loneliest generation. And so I'm described sometimes as hard-nosed, competent disruptor. I tend to be a little more centrist, but one thing I really want to focus on as well is just having fun. We need to have fun as a county together. We need to have more concerts, more movies in the park, jazz festivals, get local talent to come together. We have amazing artists. You see the art on the streets, and I want to see it in a way where artists can come together and share their talents with everyone else. Multicultural events. I mean, I'm an Egyptian, Arab American myself, and we really strive when we bring out the diversity of our community, and I want us to have fun again and hope and smile again with each other and come out of this isolation.
Thank you so much, Sharia. Okay, Jessica.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the topics that have been raised, and I do think that those are very important topics. One of the things that we haven't talked about really, though, is economic development and the role of government, specifically Multnomah County, into working on getting people to be self-sufficient. We provide so many services. We're considered the safety net government, but if we're not helping people be self-sufficient, we're only doing half our jobs. As county chair, I will work to bring together private sector, businesses, unions, schools, and community college to make sure that we're having pathways for the people that we're serving to get into jobs. I was a supporter of the Black Entrepreneurial Fund, which is actually helping identify and find opportunities for our Black community members. And we need to continue to be working and supporting community organizations in the roles that they have at the base level of finding people to get into servicing, to get into jobs, especially in the peer support role that we actually can provide some access to and opportunities at the county. So I think that is a huge place where I will have a priority as chair.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Okay, thank you to all of the candidates for your responses. And thank you, of course, to the City Club and community members who submitted questions. It is now time for our closing statements, and each candidate will have 1 minute. And we'll start with Sharon. We'll next go to Sharia, Jessica, and we'll close with Lori. Sharon?
Thank you. So we are beyond the tipping point right now. We're over the cliff and need to push ourselves back on, and because we've gone off that edge. I am an ER doctor, and I will address the emergencies that are destroying individual lives and our communities. I do this work every day on the front line. I see where our systems don't intersect. I see where they can intersect and ways to push us forward. I also see how we can bring accountability, proactivity, and bigger picture thinking to a system that has been reactive and hyper-focused over the years that I have been on the board. It's like a book of dot to dots. There's a bunch of scattered dots. We have a couple of them. We need way more dots, and we need to connect them. But the bottom line is that we need change in direction. We don't need more convening, more meetings. We need action, and that is what I will bring to the county with my knowledge, skills, and yes, impatience. True leadership, true accountability, and action in the key issues we're facing.
Thank you. Sharia, your closing statement.
I would agree with Commissioner Meieran that we need change, and I am that change. I'm the only viable non-politician running. The commissioners against me have been in power for 5 or more years. They've had opportunities to address these crises, and they haven't been able to get the majority they need despite having the funds to actually effectuate the change that the people deserve. So it's time for a fresh vision, for fresh energy, for somebody who's coming in to set that vision, and I will draw upon the experience of my colleagues here that are sitting with me today. I respect them as people, but I think the leadership we've had so far is not working. We need urgent, critical, urgent action on the homeless crisis, on cleaning up our streets, on getting the garbage off the streets. It's creating a sense of disarray and discord in the people. They don't want to see it. They don't want to continue seeing our problems explode with no solutions in sight and no action over these last 5 years to critically reverse these emergencies. So if you want real change, vote for the viable candidate, vote for the competent disruptor, vote for the person who will actually focus on getting these things done and be transparent and accountable to the people, not nonprofits, not other politicians, no one else.
Thank you so much. Okay, and Jessica, you are just in time to use your final Free speech pass. Go
thank-
ahead and use it, and then we'll move to your closing statement. So you have,
I'm adding it on to my
yeah,
closing
so you
statement.
would like a minute and 30.
You got it.
Okay, a minute
thank
and
you.
30.
All right. So people are watching this today because you care about the county and you care about the people here. These next 4 years are critical for addressing the complex problems before us, and the county chair is going to be a vital part of creating that change. And we require a strong and competent leader who has a clear track record of taking on big challenges and getting results. And that's why I'm running for county chair, because that's what I've been doing in our community for the last 2 decades. From addressing climate change to creating universal preschool, I've created systemic changes at both the state and the local levels. I have never said that I can't get something done because I didn't have the right position. Instead, I fought with tenacity to maximize the impact that I could have and get results for my community, my district, my county, and my state. As a Latina, as a mother, as an East Portland resident, I have the life experience to lead with compassion and bring more voices to the table. And I have a huge group of people who are with me in this fight. I have the broadest and deepest coalition of organizations and community leaders who are supporting me in this race, including the employees of Multnomah County through Ask Me, the Portland Firefighters, Apano, Latino Network, Oregon League of Conservation Voters, Oregon Working Families Party, Pro-Choice Oregon, Sierra Club, AFL-CIO, and so many more, who know that I am a proven leader ready to take on the job of Multnomah County Chair from day one. And I invite you, this is not enough time to go through all of the things, all of the policies, so I invite you to learn more and to join me in this work by checking out jessicavegapederson.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and right at minute 30. Lori, your closing statement.
Thank you, Chabre. Growing up in the Rockwood neighborhood of Gresham, one of the lowest income and most diverse communities where over 80 languages are spoken, I've lived and witnessed firsthand the challenges that our most marginalized community members face every day. And it is that lived experience that enables me to lead with passion, humility, and purpose. I'm the only commissioner who has successfully partnered with all 5 of the cities in my district, including Portland, Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale, and Wood Village. And because of those deep relationships, I've been able to direct significant investments, like $40 million in homeless services, plans for a new homeless service center with 50 beds of alternative shelter, 334 units of affordable housing, a food bank, and a partnership with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. I don't have multiple degrees. I was lucky just to go to college. And I don't have higher political aspirations. This is the only job I want. I would be honored to earn your vote.
Thank you so much, Lori. Now, that concludes our candidate debate, and thank you to our candidates, Sharia Mayfield, Sharon Meieran, Lori Stegmann, and Jessica Vega-Pederson, for being with us and for answering all of our questions. It is not always easy being in the public eye in our current political environment, and we honor your commitment on taking this important task to heart. Thank you, of course, again to City Club sponsors, Chevron, The Standard, Northwest Natural, and Tonkin Torp. And thank you to City Club for giving me the opportunity to moderate this debate. Now, to all those viewing, thank you. Ballots for the May 17th election are now arriving. Your vote is powerful. You are powerful. Please vote. This concludes our program. Thank you, and have a great day.